Imagine hiding in a boiling pit of manure just to escape a 58-million-year-old titanoboa. That's exactly where Chin finds himself after a luxury cruise crash leaves him and the campus goddess stranded. But luckily, he just awakened a wilderness system that might just keep them alive. Here is how a socially dense student conquered the island's prehistoric food chain. Picture this. You are on a luxury cruise ship ocean trip, enjoying the ocean breeze, when suddenly some high school Chad named Gao Chinyu drops to his knees with a massive bouquet of red roses to confess his love to the school goddess Yilin. The mindless crowd of background characters is screaming at them to date, taking photos on their phones, and comparing them to Jack and Rose from Titanic. Meanwhile, our absolute hero Chin is standing by the railing, completely unbothered, watching survival videos of a guy named Master Da on his phone. Talk about immaculate introvert energy. Chin is literally about to peace out and head home, but someone in the crowd jokes that if this is Titanic, they will all end up swimming in the ocean. The universe takes that jinx way too seriously. Out of nowhere, the sky turns pitch black, massive lightning strikes, and a terrifying storm hits the ship. The alarm blares through the speakers telling all passengers to evacuate the deck immediately. The panicked students scramble everywhere like headless chickens, running for the cabin. Chin curses out whoever brought up Titanic, realizing that trying to squeeze into the cabin right now is total suicide. Instead of panicking, he spots a bright life buoy attached to the railing, dashes forward, and snatches it right off the deck. Before anyone can even process what is happening, a giant wave flips the entire cruise ship, dragging everyone down into the pitch-black ocean. Just as Chin loses consciousness underwater, a mechanical sound chimes in his brain. The wilderness system is officially activated. The system attempts to award him a newbie gift pack, but since he is completely knocked out, it stores the reward for later. Cut to the next morning. Chin wakes up washed ashore on a sunny, deserted island, still clutching the lifebuoy that literally saved his life. He strips off his soaked shirt, wrings out the water, and immediately starts analyzing his survival odds like an absolute strategist. There are no signs of human life anywhere. He calculates that search and rescue teams usually take at least 6 days to conduct a head count and deploy, meaning in the worst-case scenario he has to survive alone on this island for over a week. Luckily, he spots plenty of fallen coconuts lying on the sand. Chin pulls out a small pocket knife that he bought back when he got obsessed with Master Da's survival show. He cuts open an old coconut, takes a big gulp, but immediately critiques it like a food reviewer. He notes that the coconut is too old and lacks proper juice, estimating he needs at least 5 coconuts a day just to meet his body's basic needs. While drinking, he remembers that weird voice from earlier. Right on cue, a bright holographic screen pops out of thin air. Chin literally spits his coconut juice out in utter shock. The system asks if he wants to open his newbie gift pack. He taps the floating present icon, only to receive a common plants book and a common animals book. Chin gets instantly tilted, roasting the system devs for giving him reading material on a deserted island. Before he can complain any further, the system bypasses his mouth and downloads the entire textbook database directly into his brain. A blinding aura wraps around his head, Matrix style. Suddenly, he looks at a plain coconut on the beach, and an augmented reality UI pops up, displaying its exact botanical family, height, and properties. Our boy just transformed into a walking survival encyclopedia. But right as he is admiring his new brain cheat codes, a loud female scream echoes from deep inside the jungle. Chin turns around shocked, realizing he might not be the only survivor on this island after all. Chin charges straight into the thick jungle foliage. Tracking that ear-piercing scream, he bursts through the bushes and spots the school's hottie Yilin cowering on the ground in total terror. Right in front of her is a slithering black snake. Thanks to his newly downloaded system knowledge, an augmented reality UI immediately pops up over the reptile, identifying it as a Cynonatrix percoronata, a mildly venomous snake that loves hanging out in moist areas. As the snake rears back and lunges straight for her face, Yilin screams for help, but our boy Chin does not even flinch. He grabs the snake midair and yeets it straight into a tree trunk. He coldly tells her that if she cannot kill it, she at least needs to maim it. Yilin looks up in shock, but before she can even thank her savior, Chin turns his back and casually tells her to put her clothes on first. Turns out Yilin had sneaked into the forest to air-dry her soaked dress, leaving her in a very compromised state. She instantly turns bright red, screaming at him to close his eyes, and scrambles to fix her outfit behind a tree. Talk about an extremely awkward first impression. After fixing her dress, Yilin walks back out to the beach where Qin Tian is sitting by his coconut pile. She is secretly offended that he did not even take a single peek at her. Wondering if her campus goddess charm is completely useless against this guy, she introduces herself as a student from Guangzhou University, and gets overly excited when Qin Tian reveals he goes to the exact same school. She grabs his hands in pure joy, relieved that she is not alone on this creepy island. Qin Tian hands her a coconut shell filled with fresh coconut water, and Yilin downs the whole thing in one massive gulp. Qin Tian silently judges her, thinking to himself that women really are made of water considering how fast she drank that. He asks if she managed to salvage any phones or radios, but she admits all her belongings were swallowed by the ocean. Yilin tries to stay hopeful, claiming that a huge shipwreck involving thousands of people will definitely trigger a massive search and rescue operation. Qin Tian respects her optimism, but he knows better than to rely purely on luck to keep her busy. He points out that they urgently need to build a bonfire before nightfall to ward off poisonous bugs and creepy crawlies. The mere mention of snakes instantly cures her laziness, and she agrees to help. An hour passes as they walk down the coastline, but Yilin groans in frustration because the beach is completely spotless. Qin Tian realizes something is seriously wrong. The cruise ship crashed close to shore, yet there is zero floating debris or trash anywhere. It is almost like this island is completely cut off from the rest of the world. Suddenly, Yilin spots something shiny in the sand. She kneels down, hoping for loot, but groans when it turns out to be just a clear plastic bottle filled with water. She is about to throw it into the ocean, but Qin Tian yells at her to stop, snatching it like he just found a legendary artifact. Yilin looks at him like he lost his mind, asking what is so special about trash. Qin Tian just smirks, gathers a pile of dry leaves and twigs, and holds the water-filled plastic bottle directly above them. Using his system-infused science knowledge, he turns the bottle into a literal magnifying lens, concentrating the sunlight into a high-energy beam. Within seconds, smoke starts rising, and a bright crackling fire erupts on the sand. Yilin jumps up and down in pure awe, cheering at the blazing fire. Qin Tian flexes his survival intellect, proving that high school physics and a system cheat code can turn literal garbage into life-saving heat. The next morning starts with Qin Tian roasting fresh crabs over the bonfire. Yilin is ready to devour the entire seafood buffet, but Qin Tian snatches the crab shells away. He lectures her like a strict nutritionist, explaining that overeating crab tamale will destroy her stomach, since they cannot survive on crab and ocean breeze forever. Qin Tian announces they need to head into the forest to build a shelter and hunt for fresh water. Yilin points at a tall coconut tree, asking if climbing it is dangerous. Qin Tian deadpans, asking if she wants to climb it instead. To pull off this vertical feat, Qin Tian ties his belt around his boots for extra friction, puts his pocket knife in his mouth like a ninja, and scales the giant palm tree. He hacks down fresh coconuts, fills up their plastic bottle, and warns Yilin not to chug too much coconut juice unless she wants explosive diarrhea. Before leaving the beach, they spell out a giant SOS on the sand using rocks and leftover shells, just in case a rescue plane flies overhead. As they trek into the dense jungle, Qin Tian keeps analyzing the surrounding bushes. Yilin offers Qin Tian a drink from their bottle, strictly warning him not to let his lips touch the rim like a paranoid roommate. Yilin asks why he keeps scanning the ground, and Qin Tian reveals his high-brain deduction. The snake from yesterday was a red-banded snake, meaning a freshwater source must be close by. He scans the grass, tracking animal paths where branches are bent in one direction, flexing his Bear Grylls knowledge. Yilin calls him a total nerd, making Qin Tian question if that was a compliment or an insult. Suddenly, the sound of rushing water echoes through the trees. Qin Tian grabs Yilin's hand, dashes through the bush, and discovers a pristine freshwater river. He kneels down and splashes his face, while Yilin is calmly holding water in her hands, thinking she is about to chug dirty river water. Qin Tian's sweat drops. She reassures that she knows basic biology and would never drink unboiled river water. She isn't stupid. Yilin suggests building their tent right by the river, but Qin Tian shuts that down real fast. Camping next to a waterhole is a magnet for wild predators and flash floods. Instead, he finds a flat clear clearing with tall trees. He gives Yilin his knife to gather giant plantain leaves, while he handles the heavy construction. Judging by the sun, it is already 2 p.m., so Qin Tian works against the clock. He uses his plastic bottle trick to ignite a fire, then smacks 2 sharp stones together to craft a primitive DIY stone axe. He chops down 9 massive trees, hauling 30-kilogram logs like an absolute beast thanks to his summer job experience on his dad's sugarcane farm. Yilin returns proudly holding giant plantain leaves like an anime fairy. Together, they bind the logs using stripped tree bark as rope and drive sharpened wooden stakes into the soil. Qin Tian drapes the giant leaves over the frame, finishing a sturdy lean-to-windbreak shelter just as the sun sets. Yilin stares at the construction with a completely deadpan expression, roasting him because the tent literally only has one wall. Qin Tian frantically defends his work, explaining it blocks the ocean wind and traps heat. But right on cue, a system notification chimes in his head, awarding him 1,000 points for successfully building a shabby tent. Qin Tian twitches in pure rage at the system roasting his hard work, while smiling awkwardly at Yilin. Qin Tian begins the evening by literally suspending a plastic bottle of water directly over the open fire. Yilin freaks out, asking if boiling water in plastic is going to flood their bodies with toxic microplastics. Qin Tian cold-heartedly tells her not to drink it then, but she immediately chugs it down anyway. Suddenly, Yilin slaps Qin Tian's arm with full force, trying to kill a giant mountain mosquito. Qin Tian rubs his swollen arm, warning her that wild jungle mosquitoes are pure toxicity and can trigger high fevers. As a massive swarm descends on their camp, Qin Tian whistles a strange luring frequency he learned from a town elder, drawing the bugs toward the flame. Then he drops damp green branches onto the fire, creating a massive smoke bomb that drives the entire mosquito army away. As night settles in, Qin Tian suggests taking turns staying on guard against wild beasts, but before Yilin can even agree, she passes out cold. Sleeping completely upright like an NPC, Qin Tian sighs, gently lays her down, and decides to pull an all-nighter himself, to pass the time. He strips tree bark and weaves sturdy ropes until sunrise. When morning comes, Yilin wakes up well-rested and stretching, while Qin Tian turns around looking like a hollow zombie with terrifying pitch-black eye circles. Yilin panics, feeling super guilty, and promises to cover night guard duty tonight. They trek along the river to forage for food. Qin Tian spots red berries in the bushes, and his system UI identifies them as wild raspberries packed with kidney-clearing vitamins. He offers one to Yilin, who takes a bite and instantly makes a hysterical sour face. Qin Tian smirks, reminding her that wild berries do not fully ripen until late spring. Next, they spot a tall plantain tree. Since the trunk is too weak to climb, Qin Tian ties a stone to his new rope, hurls it over the massive fruit bunch, and yanks with all his strength. The entire heavy bunch crashes down, nearly crushing them both. Qin Tian offers her a green plantain, but she accuses him of using her as a laboratory test rat. Qin Tian peels it, takes a bite, and instantly regrets it. The wild plantain is rock-hard and packed with giant inedible seeds. Undeterred, Qin Tian strips open the plantain leaves, revealing giant wriggling leaf miner larvae. He expects Yilin to scream in disgust, but she looks at the fat bugs with pure curiosity. Qin Tian explains that these larvae pack 6 times the protein of beef. He grills them on a flat hot stone over the fire, and Yilin devours them with chopsticks, claiming they taste better than grilled snake and tamale. After breakfast, Qin Tian pulls out his pocket knife and slices their only plastic water bottle in half. Yilin screams in horror, thinking he has lost his sanity, but Qin Tian flips the top funnel inside out into the bottle base, constructing an inverted fish trap. Ding! The system awards him 200 points for crafting a shabby fish trap. Yilin asks how they will boil drinking water without a bottle now. Qin Tian drops another big brain survival hack, explaining they can pour river water into coconut shells and drop red-hot campfire rocks directly inside to boil the water instantly. With their new fish trap ready, they march back toward the river to catch some real meat. Qin Tian sets his new plastic bottle fish trap in a shaded river spot, anchoring it with heavy rocks and baiting it with juicy leaf miner larvae. As they head back, Yilin suddenly sniffs the air, following a refreshing aroma into the forest. They stumble upon a wild patch of peppermint plants. The system UI confirms that peppermint oil contains natural menthol that completely repels mosquitoes. Yilin gets hyper-hyped, and they uproot massive bundles of mint to plant a green defense perimeter around their tent. Ding! The system awards Qin Tian 200 points for crafting his stone axe earlier. Qin Tian smirks like a greedy game villain, realizing he can farm system points just by crafting daily items. Yilin stares at him giggling over a rock axe, wondering if he has officially lost his mind. Next, they walk back down to the beach to retrieve their stored coconuts, only to find the shells completely cracked open and hollowed out. Yilin freaks out, asking if a lion or tiger attacked their stash. Chin Tian roasts her logic, reminding her that lions are pure carnivores. They follow claw marks on the palm tree and spot the culprit, a massive 5-kilogram coconut crab. When the crab climbs down to ground level, Chin Tian smirks with terrifying villainous eyes. He drops a whole coconut in front of the crab, lets it use its massive armored claws to crack the hard shell, and then immediately snatches the opened coconut away. The crab gets visibly furious, so it cracks open a second coconut, and Chin Tian snatches that one too. After exploiting the crab as an unpaid manual laborer to open all their food, Chin Tian grabs the crab by its shell, stuffs it into his bag, and declares victory. Yilin deadpants, calling his petty revenge completely ruthless. On their walk back along the shore, Yilin gets hit with a sudden wave of anxiety, worrying that rescue teams might have abandoned them, but she slaps her own cheeks, trying to stay positive. They return to the river and pull up the bottle trap, finding 3 fresh fish trapped inside. Ding! The system awards 500 points for the catch, pushing Chin Tian total balance up to 2,000 points. Back at camp, Yilin builds a stone fire ring, and they roast both the fish and the giant coconut crab over the open flame. The crab meat is sweet and salty, tasting like luxury seafood. Stuffed and exhausted, Chin Tian falls asleep inside the tent, while Yilin is up for guard duty. Later that night, she is sitting terrified of wild beasts, nervously gripping her stone axe in the dark. When Chin Tian reaches out to switch shifts, Yilin screams in terror and swings the heavy stone axe directly at his face. Chin Tian dodges for his life, deadpanning that she is way too dangerous with a weapon and needs to go back to sleep. Once Yilin is safely tucked away, Chin Tian sits alone by the glowing campfire. If you guys like these type of recaps, please consider subscribing and check out my other videos. It really helps. Late that night, Chin Tian chews fresh mint leaves to stay awake on guard duty. While drinking boiled water, he overhears Yilin sleep talking inside the tent, sobbing in her sleep and begging rescue teams to save them. Chin Tian realizes that behind her cheerful smile, she is actually terrified of being abandoned on this island. Determined to keep her safe, Chin Tian opens his system shop with his hard-earned 2,000 points. The shop offers illustrated books for survival, so he purchases the Tools Illustrated book. Blinding knowledge floods his brain, giving him instant blueprints to craft pottery, arrows, and even paper. To top it off, the system grants him a free lucky roulette spin for making his first purchase. He taps start, and the wheel lands on a rare reward, agility of a cheetah. Chin Tian decides to save the skill for an emergency. Morning breaks, and Chin Tian is outside roasting fresh fish on sticks. Yilin wakes up, pouting at him for not waking her. Then she announces she is heading down to the river alone. Chin Tian blurts out if she is going to poop, telling her to bury it so wild beasts do not smell it. Yilin turns bright red and screams at the top of her lungs that she is going to shower, not poop. Chin Tian's sweat drops, realizing he just made an extremely awkward social blunder. While Yilin showers, Chin Tian goes foraging in the forest. He finds hoof fungus growing on a tree trunk, which the system identifies as non-edible mushrooms that act as long-lasting firewood. Suddenly, a wild rabbit dashes out of the bush. Knowing wild rabbits run at 70 kilometers an hour, Chin Tian throws his stone axe to spook it, then sprints full speed ahead. He dives through the air, but the rabbit jukes him like Bugs Bunny, leaving Chin Tian face first in the dirt. He brushes the mud off his clothes and follows his footprints back to camp. Just as he approaches, a piercing scream echoes from the river. Chin Tian sprints toward the water, finding Yilin naked in the water, screaming in terror of a snake. Chin Tian leaps straight into the river, reaches into the water, and grabs the creature barehanded. He holds it up in triumph, revealing it is actually a massive wild swamp eel. The system confirms it is non-venomous, packed with delicious fat, and skilled at digging tunnels. Yilin yells at him to get the slimy thing away from her, so Chin Tian steps onto the riverbank to wait for her to finish dressing. As Chin Tian admires his new fat eel dinner, Yilin fixes her dress behind a tree, blushing out of her mind. When she steps out with wet braided hair, she notices Chin Tian staring at her. She nervously asks why he is looking at her like that. Chin Tian blushes slightly, clears his throat, and casually drops a smooth line, telling her it is because she is pretty. Yilin turns redder than a ripe tomato, lets out a squeal, and runs all the way back to the tent in pure embarrassment. Chin Tian stands alone by the tree holding a wiggling eel, completely cringing at his own unscripted smooth talk. Qin Tian marches back to the riverbank, fully determined to wipe out the local swamp eel population like a menace. He locates their muddy underwater tunnels, suddenly remembering a ridiculously dumb high school memory where he reached into a hole barehanded and got bitten by a snake. Seriously. Who shoves their bare hand into random dark holes in the wild to avoid getting his fingers bitten off again? He weaves a tough water plant into a makeshift fishing line, dangling it inside the burrow. Within seconds, a massive eel bites down, and Qin Tian yanks out two huge slippery monsters. He carries them back to camp like a proud fisherman showing off his daily loot, since they cannot eat two giant eels before the meat turns into a biohazard. Qin Tian sets up a DIY smoking rack over the campfire. He gives Yilin a side quest to weave tree bark into ropes, basically keeping her occupied like a toddler in a daycare while he handles the actual survival work. With 3 days' worth of smoked protein secured, Qin Tian checks his plastic bottle trap at the river, reinforcing their campsite against potential spring floods because he is paranoid like a doomsday prepper. That evening, Chef Qin Tian serves the smoked eel topped with fresh wild raspberries. Yilin takes a single bite with her chopsticks and immediately enters full Food Wars anime food orgasm mode. I am talking background cherry blossoms. Not what you sick people imagine. She closes her eyes, dramatically preaching about the heavenly harmony between sweet sour berries and smoky eel meat dancing on her tongue. Honestly, Gordon Ramsay could never. Qin Tian smirks, casually reminding her that it would be actual paradise if they were not currently stranded on a deserted island. The next morning, Qin Tian carves a star on a tree trunk to mark his path, because getting lost twice in a row would ruin his Sigma male image. His main mission today is hunting wild rabbits. He brings a piece of smoldering hoof fungus to use as a makeshift tear gas grenade. We see a 2 days flashback. Qin Tian disassembled the windbreaker and built a proper tent, which protects not only from wind but rain and keep the inside warmer. Back to present. Finding a massive rabbit burrow with 5 exit holes, Qin Tian blocks 3 of the escape routes with heavy boulders, then pumps thick fungus smoke directly into the main entrance like a SWAT team officer. Within minutes, a tiny panicked bunny scrambles out of the unblocked exit. Qin Tian lunges forward and snatches it by the scruff. But then a massive mother rabbit dashes right past his feet. Qin Tian peers inside the smoky hole and discovers 3 adorable baby bunnies huddled together. 30 minutes later, he struts back to camp carrying an entire bunny family like grocery bags. Yilin gasps in pure joy, running over to cuddle the fluffy little rabbits. Qin Tian fully expects her to cry, throw a massive temper tantrum, and forbid him from cooking them. He offers to go clean the meat by the river. But Yilin hugs the bunny close and unleashes her terrifying inner butcher. She looks at the tiny rabbits, smirking like a ruthless RimWorld player, and says they should raise the baby bunnies first so they can fatten them up for a bigger feast later. Qin Tian sweat drops in absolute horror, realizing his cute waifu companion is secretly a bloodthirsty livestock farmer. Yilin whispers a fake apology to the mother rabbit, deciding they will eat the mom today and farm her children for future meals. Qin Tian heads down to the river, drains the mother rabbit blood, cleans the meat, and saves her thick pelt thinking they might come in handy later. Dinner starts with Qin Tian serving roasted rabbit, but Yilin complains that the meat tastes way too bloody. Girl, you are stranded on a deserted island, not dining at a 5-star Michelin restaurant. Qin Tian cold-heartedly tells her to stick to fish. Yilin happily eats fish instead, counting down the hours because tomorrow is day 7. The day she delusionally expects a rescue helicopter to swoop in. Knowing rescue is a total gamble, Qin Tian decides to grind his survival stats. He uses his system book to practice primitive fire making, spinning a wooden bow drill like a caveman trying to summon fire magic. He blows on the smoking tinder like a dramatic wizard until actual flames burst out. The morning of day 7 arrives. Yilin asks if they should release the bunnies since they are leaving today, but Qin Tian lies through his teeth to keep their emergency food supply safe. They march down to the shore, staring at the empty blue ocean for hours. But as the sun sets with 0 rescue boats in sight, Yilin officially loses her mind. She enters a full-blown existential crisis, crying hysterically and screaming that everyone abandoned them to die. To break her out of the panic attack, Qin Tian delivers the most aggressive anime hysteria slap right across her face. He tells her it is okay to cry, and Yilin collapses into his chest, weeping her eyes out all night. But do not think she forgot about that smack. The very next morning, Yilin walks up to Qin Tian and slaps him straight back in the face with maximum velocity. She smiles cheerfully, thanking him for comforting her yesterday, but insisting that the delayed slap was pure mandatory get back. Respect the pettiness. Chin Tian then drops an absolute nerd bomb. Flexing his ocean tide physics knowledge, he breaks down how tides shift 48 minutes later every single day, calculating that today low tide is 4 hours and 48 minutes late. Chin Tian bonks her head for overthinking, but warns her that official search teams usually give up after a month. He tells her they might need to pull a castaway move, build their own raft, and sail across the ocean. They trek back to camp and inspect the wooden rabbit cage, discovering the brilliant bunnies were literally 2 bites away from gnawing their way to freedom. Yilin cooks up fresh seafood over the fire, and Chin Tian tells her to hoard the clamshells for future crafting tools like a true RPG hoarder. Exhausted from pulling back-to-back all-nighters, Chin Tian begs Yilin to wake him up at midnight so he can take guard duty. When the sun rises, Chin Tian wakes up shocked to find out he slept the entire night. He looks over at Yilin and is mortified to see her standing there looking like a Skyrim NPC after a 72-hour gaming binge. She has massive pitch-black zombie circles under her eyes because she let him sleep out of pity. Chin Tian sweat drops, telling the walking ghost waifu to go pass out while he grabs his stone axe to forage for loot. Chin Tian treks through the forest at 9 in the morning, grinding for resources, when he hits an absolute survival jackpot. Right in front of him is a dense bamboo forest. Using his system crafting blueprints, he knows bamboo is basically nature cheat codes. He hacks at the green stalks with his stone axe, complaining about how hard it vibrates through his hands like he is using a low-tier Minecraft wooden pickaxe. By the evening, he hauls a massive bundle of bamboo back to camp, where Yilin eagerly greets him with a surprise dinner. She hands him a skewer of grilled fish, but Chin Tian stares at it in total horror. The fish is so burnt it looks like a block of coal or an actual hate crime against seafood. Yilin looks at him with adorable starry eyes, asking if her cooking is good. Chin Tian takes a bite, internally dying from the bitter toxicity, but lies through his teeth like the ultimate gentleman simping for survival. Yilin gets excited and takes a bite herself, only to instantly gag and spit it out, crying that she ruined their precious food. Chin Tian reassures her that everyone starts somewhere, and forces himself to eat the charcoal stick anyway like a true gigachad. That night, Chin Tian starts chopping bamboo to upgrade their gear. He explains that their plastic bottle trap is way too small, so he is crafting a giant woven bamboo trap. He gives Yilin the job of slicing bamboo water canteens, and she gets hyper-enthusiastic about contributing. Chin Tian lets out an evil anime villain laugh, secretly planning to overwork her like an unpaid IT intern. Ding! The system awards him 500 points for crafting a shabby bamboo fish trap. The next morning, they march deep into the bamboo forest together. Chin Tian hands Yilin his knife, instructing her to search for fresh bamboo shoots. Yilin searches the forest floor and finds a cluster of delicious shoots. But just as she celebrates, a terrifying menacing growl vibrates through the trees. She turns around and spots a wild boar sniffing the bushes. Yilin covers her mouth, sneaks away like a ninja, and sprints back to Chin Tian, screaming that an entire herd of 8 boars is heading their way. Chin Tian grabs her hand, knowing wild boars are aggressive tank units in the wild. But before they can escape, a giant 2-meter alpha boar steps out of the bamboo, blocking their exit like a Dark Souls boss. The system UI pops up, warning that wild boars are ferocious omnivores capable of killing young tigers. Chin Tian puts his finger to his lips, telling Yilin to walk away quietly, but the giant boar sniffs the air. Its eyes turn blood red, and it lets out a demonic snarl. Chin Tian screams in pure panic, snatches Yilin's hand, and sprints for his life like he is running from a raid boss. Chin Tian and Yilin sprint through the bamboo forest with an angry wild boar herd hot on their heels. Yilin gasps for air, suddenly stopping and pulling a full main character drama self-sacrifice move. She gets all dramatic about getting eaten alive, begging Chin Tian to abandon her and save himself. Girl, this is a survival situation, not an Oscar-winning romantic tragedy. Chin Tian roasts her delusional movie star energy, knowing abandoning her is a total non-option. So he stops running, turns around, and prepares to pull the most absurd bluff in anime history. Knowing boars in groups are terrified of getting hurt, Chin Tian pounds his chest like Tarzan having a rage moment and lets out a primal roar. He raises his stone axe, screaming at them to get lost. The intimidation check actually passes, and the boar herd turns tail and runs away like scared toddlers. But right as Chin Tian catches his breath, one giant scar-faced alpha boar stays behind, glaring at him with pure Dark Souls boss energy. A wounded lone boar is 10 times more aggressive. Qin Tian smacks the alpha boar with his axe, kiting it away so Yilin can escape back to the safety of the tent. Once Yilin is gone, Qin Tian opens his system menu and hits the NOS button, activating his skill card. Agility of a cheetah. Boom! He turns into a human speed demon. Zooming through the forest at supersonic speeds like Sonic the Hedgehog, he blasts 2 kilometers away in seconds, leaving the boar eating dust. But as the cheat code wears off, Qin Tian crashes onto the grass, gasping for air and realizing human lungs are definitely not built for cheetah cardio. Before he can even catch his breath, the ground starts trembling. The relentless boar literally tracked his scent across 2 whole kilometers. Talk about a dedicated hater. Qin Tian panics, scrambling up a tall tree like a terrified house cat. But this boar is an absolute wrecking ball. It lowers its head and starts headbutting the tree trunk like a battering ram, wobbling the entire tree. Just as Qin Tian prepares to jump for his life, the boar suddenly stops, huffing and bleeding out from its previous battle wounds. Qin Tian stares down at the exhausted beast. Realizing this 100-kilogram unit is a whole month worth of unlimited bacon, he drops off the tree branch, draws his pocket knife, and goes full monster hunter. He leaps onto the boar back, plunging the blade straight into its skull. The boar bucks wildly, throwing Qin Tian into the dirt. But Qin Tian tackles the beast once more, driving the knife deep into its neck until the monster finally collapses. Ding! The system awards him a whopping 2,000 points for soloing the raid boss. Covered in dirt and blood, Qin Tian lies on the grass in complete exhaustion. Realizing the blood scent will attract every meat eater on the island, he uses leafy branches to sweep leaves over the massive carcass, literally trying to hide a 100-kilogram dead boar like a broken vase under a rug. Yilin is out here tearing her dress hem like Lara Croft, packing fireplace ashes into little pouches, preparing the ultimate disrespect of throwing pocket sand in a boar's eyes if things go sideways. She is convinced her survival partner is doomed. But right on cue, Qin Tian casually strolls back into Camp Flex holding a fresh catch of fish. Yilin drops her ash bombs and instantly launches herself into his chest for a full dramatics anime hug. She is practically crying tears of joy, while Qin Tian stands there completely unbothered. He nonchalantly peels off his soaked shirt to dry it out. When he starts removing his pants, Yilin immediately short-circuit from the unexpected front-row stripping show. She covers her blushing face like a Victorian maiden. While Qin Tian just stands there a little embarrassed, Yilin tells him he better dry his damp clothes by the bonfire so he does not catch a cold. Yilin screams in total embarrassment when he suddenly drops his pants. But Qin Tian ignores her squeaking and drops a massive bomb. He actually soloed the giant boar from earlier and hid the carcass near the bamboo forest. Yilin freaks out at the thought of going back into boss territory. So Qin Tian hits her with a deep anime flashback story about a fisherman's family overcoming a tsunami to prove a point. The lesson is simple. Running away forever gets you killed in this game, so they are going to craft a bamboo longbow and go full monster hunter on the wildlife. The next morning, Qin Tian tells Yilin to guard the fish traps and please not burn breakfast. He activates his cheetah speed buff trial card before it expires at noon. He arrives at the carcass to find local scavengers taking a few bites, but the prime leg meat is still totally intact. While carving off the tough hide for blankets, he notices terrifying gouges in the ribs. Realizing some unseen island apex predator mangled this boar before him, Qin Tian extracts tendons for bowstrings, packs 50 pounds of pork on his back, and sprints home while Yilin grinds rabbit bones back at camp. Qin Tian teleports back into base and almost gives Yilin a heart attack while she is carving a needle out of rabbit bone. But her terror vanishes the second she sees massive pork legs, going completely feral over pig feet like a Michelin star chef. Qin Tian pulls out raw fat to render into lard, and when Yilin asks how they will boil anything without cookware, Qin Tian decides it is time to unlock the pottery age. Qin Tian pulls up his system database like a Minecraft wiki page, analyzing 6 different clay crafting methods. He skips the complex tools and selects the coiling technique, rolling out mud snakes to build bowls with his bare hands. However, Qin Tian's first attempt ends in utter tragedy, when his clay masterpiece turns out looking like a literal, undeniable pile of poop. Yilin stares in dead silence while Qin Tian smashes it in pure embarrassment, begging her to pretend she saw nothing. He resets his dignity, completes a decent bowl and lets Yilin try, only for her to instantly flex god-tier artisan skill on her very first attempt. Qin Tian digs out a pit kiln to bake their cookware properly, grinding late into the evening like a true survival jigachad. By nightfall, they are living like island royalty. Roasting prime pork ribs over an open fire, Yilin notices Qin Tian smiling like a villain who just won the lottery, and shows off his shirt, neatly mended with her handmade bone needle, with infinite pork, custom pottery, and a cheat engine system. Qin Tian stretches under the night sky. Knowing this island is officially his kingdom, Qin Tian starts his morning chewing on a charred stick, dropping Dr. Stone-level wisdom on Yilin by explaining that charcoal powder makes a top-tier DIY toothpaste. They check their clay kiln. Realizing these homemade pots take 5 whole hours to bake, Qin Tian assigns Yilin to pot molding duty. While he watches the fire like a hawk to prevent cracking, noon rolls around and it is an utter disaster. Almost every pot explodes in the heat except for one solitary survivor, refusing to take an L. Qin Tian smashes the failed pots into fine powder, mixing it back into fresh clay to boost viscosity. By evening, his big brain recovery strategy pays off with a flawless batch of sturdy stoneware. The next morning, Qin Tian boils boar fat into lard, before randomly smashing seashells on a rock. When Yilin asks why he is acting strange, Qin Tian casually drops the ultimate survival bomb. Announcing they are making homemade soap, Yilin loses her mind with joy, while Qin Tian gives a high school chemistry lecture on saponification. Qin Tian bakes calcium carbonate into lye, while Yilin fans away carbon dioxide fumes with leaves like a loyal anime assistant. He mixes the solution with pig fat, explaining that on a deserted island with 0 hospitals, hygiene soap is literally the difference between life and a lethal infection. Qin Tian slurps up the residual pan oil like a true street food connoisseur, ignoring Yilin's horrified face. They stir the soap mixture until sunset, setting it aside to harden overnight while rain clouds begin gathering on the horizon. While fast wind blows, Qin Tian opens his system UI, flexing a crisp 6,000 system points earned from crafting pots and soap. Yilin walks out freshly showered, her hair clean and smelling amazing. Qin Tian casually hands her a custom hand-carved wooden comb, acting like he didn't just spend hours making it. He puts Yilin on boar skin scraping duty, while he starts heat-treating green bamboo over the fire. Since natural drying takes 2 years, he uses fire-bending techniques to shape sturdy arcs for compound bows. After grinding for a full day, thunder shakes the island. Qin Tian frantically scrambles through the rain, stashing raw boar meat and tendons inside their newly baked clay pots to stop them from rotting. Sheltered inside their tent, a heavy downpour hits the camp, but their thatched roof holds up like a champ. On dinner time, Yilin praises Qin Tian for being a high school science genius, and they chatted like this for a while before bed. But their cozy sleep is instantly shattered by massive seismic vibrations. Yilin wakes up thinking it is breakfast time, but Qin Tian grabs her arm and screams to knock down their shelter support posts immediately. Yilin panics in confusion, but Qin Tian drags her up a giant tree, shushing her as a frantic stampede of deer and rabbits bursts through their camp. Yilin thinks the danger passed, but Qin Tian points down as a massive herd of over 20 enraged wild boars charges through the mud. While the other boars ran off, 2 stayed behind. The heavy rain covers their human scent, but as Qin Tian looks closer, his blood runs cold. The massive boars are trembling and covered in deep, whip-like lash wounds. Qin Tian realizes with horror that whatever mystery apex predator did this, wiped out an entire boar herd for fun. Up in the tree, Yilin is shivering violently from hypothermia, forcing Qin Tian to pull off the ultimate galaxy brain distraction tactic by yeeting his shoe into the distant bushes. The shoe thuds, the 2 boar snarls, and charges off into the dark like angry video game NPCs chasing a fake audio lure. With the boars gone, Qin Tian tells Yilin to jump down so he can catch her, but she instantly slips on a wet branch and crashes directly on top of him in a textbook romance anime tumble. Yilin sprouts a massive cartoon lump on her forehead, while the system randomly flashes a 3,000-point mission completion reward. Qin Tian shouts 3,000 points out loud like a madman. Leaving Yilin utterly confused, they inspect the camp, realizing that knocking down their shelter posts actually saved their rabbits and meat traps from getting flattened. While picking up smashed soap blocks, Qin Tian casually asks Yilin to hand over her underwear, so he can conserve soap while washing her clothes. Yeah bro, sure she was gonna hand over her underwear. While you are at it, might as well ask her for a blow. Yilin goes absolute demon mode, screaming that it is her only pair. Qin Tian smartly pivots away to check the river, relieved they did not set up camp near the swollen, overflowing bank. Qin Tian wades into the raging water to save his fish trap, before wrapping giant plantain leaves around his waist like a primitive fashion statement while his clothes dry. That night by the campfire, Yilin gets anxious about another boar raid. So Qin Tian promises to stay on guard and finish his compound bow. Still rocking his leaf skirt, Qin Tian goes full master blacksmith. Binding bamboo limbs with rope, wrapping handles in soft rabbit fur, and shredding dried pig tendons with his teeth to weave a custom bowstring. He tests the draw flex, grabs wet branches, and burns sturdy arrow shafts over the fire. He shapes sharp stone arrowheads and attaches leaf fletchings, triggering a system alert that awards 2,000 points for crafting. Now sitting on a massive 11,000 system points, Qin Tian browses the store between bull strength and cheetah speed. Realizing raw power will not save him from an entire herd, he buys cheetah speed like a true agility build main. The system executes a full body reconstruction, blasting Qin Tian with a golden aura upgrade that leaves him feeling lighter, stronger, and fully rested. The next day, they clean up camp debris, while Yilin flexes her speedrunning skills by baking a new batch of clay pots twice as fast. 2 days later, Qin Tian steps out to test his new weapon, having zero real archery experience. Qin Tian misses his first target tree by a mile, but after grinding target practice all day, he transforms into a budget Hawkeye who sometimes miss. The next morning, he hikes into the damp woods, spots giant tadpoles living in leaf puddles, and arrives at the bamboo forest to harvest fresh sprouts. Qin Tian hears rustling and spots wild pheasants. Immediately dreaming of hot pheasant soup, he draws his bow and fires, but misses completely because the birds keep bobbing around like glitching target dummies. Qin Tian sneaks closer, locks in his aim, and snipes a pheasant straight through the neck. The system awards 200 points, prompting Qin Tian to go full rapid-fire mode, sniping 2 more birds in seconds. Running out of arrows, he collects his loot. Qin Tian lifts the clay lid off their steaming pot, unleashing a wave of gourmet pheasant and bamboo sprout soup. Yilin takes one single spoon lick and undergoes a full Food Wars-style culinary awakening, floating through a field of magical birds while praising the flavor profile. Qin Tian notes that adding salt would make it literally divine, causing Yilin to realize they have been speedrunning sodium deficiency for 2 straight weeks. Qin Tian breaks down the medical reality of fluid imbalance and weak limbs, promising to kickstart salt production tomorrow while recycling pheasant feathers for arrow fletchings. The next morning, they set up shop at the beach to boil seawater. While waiting for the pots to sizzle, Qin Tian decides to craft a precision mud sundial so they can stop living like uncultured cavemen. He flattens out a square mud slab, uses a string like a geometric compass, and carves out a circular clock face. He lectures Yilin on equatorial alignment and seasonal sun angles, while Yilin flexes her high school honors intellect by predicting the exact axis angles. When she asks if they should craft a sextant next to calculate longitude and latitude, Qin Tian admits they do not need to go that hard on navigation math just yet. Sunlight hits its shortest shadow, calibrating their newly minted sundial to exactly 12 o'clock noon. Qin Tian inspects the boiled ocean water, scooping up 200 grams of raw salt. He takes a taste test and instantly regrets his life choices, gagging on bitter sand impurities. Determined to refine his salt stack, Qin Tian builds a multi-tier filtration rig. He stacks pebbles, coarse sand, fine sand, and charcoal inside a perforated bamboo chute, running the salty brine through the layers to strip away bitter minerals. By 6 o'clock on the sundial, they drop the refined white salt into their pheasant broth. Yilin takes another bite and ascends straight into flavor nirvana again. She checks the calendar, noting it is officially day 22 on this death island. When Yilin asks about building an escape boat, Qin Tian sets realistic expectations. Ocean travel requires a massive fishing vessel build, meaning step 1 is building a secure, upgraded main base. Yilin agrees that their current location is a giant target for wild boar herds, prompting Qin Tian to go scouting 4 days later. He reaches the bright edge of the jungle, discovering a beautiful open plain with a massive rock cave. Seeking a storm-proof megabase, Qin Tian fires a warning arrow inside to check for aggressive mobs, hearing only the thud against stone. He steps into the cave, only to trip over a bone-chilling pile of slaughtered animal skeletons. Before he can process the creature radar warning, a massive shadow drops from the ceiling. Qin Tian pops Cheetah's agility, executing a high-speed dodge roll just as a red-eyed black and white nightmare swipes at his face. Qin Tian realizes this apex predator is a giant panda, desperate to pacify the beast. He tosses a fresh bamboo sprout at its feet. The demonic panda sniffs the offering, then brutally crunches through the solid bamboo like a pretzel stick. It lets out an earth-shattering roar. Standing tall with blood-red eyes and a terrifying inverted coat pattern, Qin Tian stands his ground, Realizing he just stumbled into the territorial boss fight of a lifetime, Qin Tian realizes fighting this demonic panda head-on is suicide. So he uses his speed to gain distance and scales a tree. The massive beast strolls right under him, proving its eyesight and smell are totally garbage. Qin Tian takes aim from the high ground, whispering a polite apology before letting an arrow fly. The arrow hits, but bounces right off the panda's thick hide like a plastic toy dart. The panda turns around with glowing red eyes. So Qin Tian pops his cheetah speed buff to dash away. He loads a stone-tipped arrow, takes aim at its head, and lands a direct hit. But the stone tip snaps like a dry cracker, leaving the panda even more enraged. Realizing the beast literally has a skull made of reinforced steel, Qin Tian barely dodges a terrifying claw swipe and decides to call an audible. Running out of energy, he retreats back to camp to brainstorm a new strategy. That night, Yilin suggests just finding a different cave. But Qin Tian refuses to give up. He pulls out his steel belt buckle, planning to forge a high-tier armor-piercing steel arrowhead. To conserve metal, he plans to tie a rope to the arrow so he can reel it back like a fishing harpoon. He lectures Yilin on how charcoal fires only reach 700 degrees, meaning they need 1500 degrees to melt steel. To achieve max forge temperatures, they build a custom pneumatic bellows. Qin Tian handles the carpentry while Yilin carves the arrowhead mold out of clay. Yilin roasts Qin Tian about his pants falling down without a belt, but he casually shoots back asking if she is ready for his pantsless era. They crank the bellows continuously, pushing the kiln fire to absolute maximum heat. Liquid metal fills the mold. Yilin collapses onto the grass completely drained, and Qin Tian grinds the cooled steel tip, earning 500 system points for unlocking Metal Gear. That night, Qin Tian sharpens his shiny new steel arrowhead, while Yilin sleeps like a baby, sitting on 4,700 system points. He opens the system shop to buy the Wild Animals Encyclopedia. The system pushes a 4,500-point bundle deal including animal taming. So Qin Tian smashes the buy button like an impulsive shopper. He opens the taming manual expecting pro tips, but gets hit with pure brain rot. Step 1 for taming a kangaroo: slide under its legs and attack its anus. Qin Tian stares in utter disbelief as the guide moves to hippos, instructing him to slide under the hippo, slap its private parts until it passes out, and beat its backside. The final guide for orangutans tells him to piss off the ape, slide under it, grab an AK-47, and unload the magazine. Qin Tian realizes he just got scammed out of his life savings by a system author who belongs in an asylum. The next morning, Yilin praises his breakfast cooking while asking if she can come see the scary panda. Qin Tian strictly tells her to stay in camp for her own safety, grabs his bow and heads out alone. Arriving at the cave with only one steel arrow, Qin Tian notches a test charcoal arrow, firing into the dark abyss to lure the giant beast out. Qin Tian is out here wandering through the jungle like a lost Skyrim NPC, wondering where that giant panda disappeared to and if his Wild Animals Encyclopedia has any info for him. Right on cue, the red-eyed demon bear emerges from the bushes. His trusty system encyclopedia hits him with a wild historical fact. This absolute unit of a bear isn't your average zoo animal. It's a prehistoric relic straight out of the Miocene epoch from 8 million years ago. The system hits him with a random taming manual, claiming pandas were originally carnivores that turned into bamboo-munching couch potatoes, meaning if he feeds it enough bamboo for 2 months, it'll become a loyal pet. Qin Tian thinks about attacking its genitals as the book suggested, but decides that a classic arrow to the back is a much better idea. His arrow lands with a brutal crunch. Then he pulls the arrow back with the rope, sending the prehistoric beast into an absolute rage. Qin Tian immediately activates his cheetah agility skill. He lures the bear through the trees, shooting it from a safe distance. But after burning through his entire stamina bar, he decides to stop there for the day. On day 1, he lands 6 solid hits. On day 2, again he snipes it from a tree like a total FPS camper. On day 3, he pins it while it wanders. But on day 4, tracking the blood trail to a dark cave, Qin Tian wonders if the bear bleed to death. But it set a literal tactical ambush. The massive shadow looms over him from behind, forcing Qin Tian to pop his speed skill just to dodge a lethal strike. Qin Tian jumps back and fires another arrow. But this bear has officially leveled up its battle IQ. It swats the arrow out of the air and snaps the shaft right in its jaws. To make matters worse, a heavy rainstorm begins, leaving Qin Tian with only one single steel arrow left in his inventory. But just then, he spots a glowing sapphire poison dart frog chillin' on a leaf. According to the system, Its skin packs enough neurotoxin to completely shut down a creature's respiratory system, giving Chin Tian that ultimate villainous anime smirk. Remembering an old wild survival guide about poison arrows, he carefully scoops up the toxic little guy on an arrow. Realizing the storm is getting worse, he dashes back to camp where Yilin immediately tackles him with a desperate hug. Crying out about where he was all this time, Chin Tian can only chuckle, thinking the wild boar trauma turned his campus goddess into a super needy waifu. He gently pats her head, but Yilin instantly goes full tsundra, pouting that she wasn't scared at all, just worried about him. Noticing the bright blue frog, she asks if it's poisonous, comparing it to fancy toxic mushrooms, which prompts Chin Tian to explain his plan for the panda. The next morning, Chin Tian roasts the frog over open flames, cooking up forbidden potion ingredients. The moisture boils on the frog's skin, turning into dark and nasty-smelling pure concentrated poison. He carefully dips his arrowheads into the sludge, ensuring maximum lethal damage without instantly killing the bear. Yilin hands over a fresh pile of tightly rolled grass balls, completely confused about his plan. But Chin Tian ensures her that he has a good plan. Reaching the panda's cave with 0 tracks going outside, Chin Tian confirms the target is trapped in. Chin Tian lights those grass balls on fire and chucks them straight into the cavern like smoke grenades. Smoke billows into the cave, forcing the suffocating, blood-drained panda to come barging out in a complete panic. With the boss heavily weakened from inhaling lots of carbon dioxide, Chin Tian pops his cheetah agility once again to create distance. The exhausted monster stomps through the bushes, completely out of breath. Chin Tian smoothly draws back his bamboo bow, lining up his poison-laced arrow for the ultimate finishing blow. Chin Tian looses his arrow straight into the panda's rear end, even though it's just a stone arrowhead. But this angry prehistoric unit turns around and charges at him anyway. Chin Tian lands another hit, watching the bear start to wobble as muscle paralysis sets in. The bear snarls right in his face, making Chin Tian regret not using his last steel arrow. Just as the bear was dangerously close, the giant beast faceplants straight into the dirt with a loud thud. It was literally fighting on sheer anger alone before the poison took over. 1 hour later, the bear is shivering on the grass. 2 hours later, it manages to sit up. And by 3 hours, it wobbles back onto its feet like a drunk guy leaving a club at 3 in the morning. Seeing the bear barely able to walk, Chin Tian knows the toxin dosage was perfect, strong enough to restrain the beast without killing it. The next morning, Chin Tian grabs fresh fish and bamboo sprouts, while reassuring Yilin that today's mission is a guaranteed success. Arriving at the cave, he finds the massive panda completely passed out right at the entrance. Laughing at how dumb ancient animals were, Chin Tian shoves bamboo sprouts inside a fresh fish and smacks it straight at the bear's butt. The panda wakes up growling, but the lingering paralysis keeps it from attacking. Smelling the fish, it immediately chomps down, devouring the bamboo-filled meal in seconds. Realizing this giant tank is as simple-minded as it is strong, Chin Tian dangles another fish in front of its drooling face. The starving bear scarfs down the second fish like a competitive eater. Chin Tian strokes his chin, deciding on the most epic, magnificent name for this terrifying prehistoric apex predator, and settles on Fatty. Later that night back at camp, while sipping warm soup over the fire, Chin Tian calculates it'll take about 2 months to fully tame Fatty. Yilin hears the name Fatty and instantly looks at him like he's an absolute idiot. Disgusted by his atrocious naming skills, she loses her appetite and pushes her bowl away. Being as dense as a literal brick, Chin Tian asks if it's that time of the month, which immediately causes Yilin to explode in anger, screaming at him to stop pissing her off. Internally panicking, Chin Tian realizes the lack of sanitary supplies on a deserted island is a genuine survival hazard. Yilin shyly admits her cramps just started from her irregular schedule, looking completely defeated, until Chin Tian casually drops that they're going to manufacture paper tomorrow. Yilin's eyes light up with hope, even as Chin Tian reflects on the ancient Han Dynasty paper-making process, which involved soaking plants, boiling fibers, and endless manual labor. The next morning, Yilin wakes up to an absolute biohazard smell. She spots Chin Tian holding a pot of literal urine, looking at him with utter disgust and accusing him of having a nasty hobby. Chin Tian yells that he's using it for science, ordering her to weave a bamboo frame while he sets up the plumbing. This absolute mad scientist sets up a full-scale chemical refinery on a deserted island. Using urine for ammonia and roasted clamshell powder for potassium carbonate, he creates a DIY distillation rig with clay pipes. When Yilin stares in utter shock at his chemistry genius, Chin Tian yells at her to stop spacing out and pour the water. Through a series of insane chemical reactions combining salt, lime water, and sodium carbonate, he successfully creates sodium hydroxide solution to break down plant cellulose for paper pulp. Exhausted from the multi-step chemistry exam, Yilin complains that this is way too much work, wishing they had electricity for simple brine electrolysis. Qin Tian sarcastically suggests tying a knife to a bamboo stick in a thunderstorm to catch lightning. To which Yilin bluntly tells him he can go get struck by lightning all by himself. After gathering a pile of weeds, Qin Tian boils them in his DIY chemical soup for hours to dissolve the plant gunk. Before washing the pulp in the river, he pours the pure fiber solution over their bamboo screen mold, smoothing out thin layers to dry in the sun, earning a sweet 1,000 system points for unlocking the paper age. The finished paper is a bit yellowish, but super elastic, prompting Qin Tian to proudly flex that they finally don't have to wipe with tree twigs anymore. Yilin instantly gags since they are literally eating dinner right now. She calls him gross, but still praises his big brain survival skills, while Qin Tian plays it humble like a true anime protagonist. 3 days later, he hikes over to check on Fatty. Fatty wakes up growling like a threatened raid boss, until he spots the fresh fish in Qin Tian's hands. The terrifying prehistoric beast drops its edge instantly, sitting down like a polite golden retriever to devour its meal, while Qin Tian whacks it over the head with another fish just to show who's boss. Heading down to the lake, Qin Tian hunts for wild ginseng, pulling up 3-year-old rootstocks to cook up a restorative potion. Back at camp, Yilin is curled up in absolute agony from brutal period cramps. Qin Tian asks, does it usually hurt this bad? While cooking up a warm pot of ginger ginseng tea, she answers in agony that it doesn't. Qin Tian asks what she used to do to reduce it. Yilin lists, hugging a warm pocket or sugar tea. Then our Prince Charming surprises her with a flask and ginger tea. Handing her a steaming cup, he lies through his teeth about just stumbling upon the ginger, making Yilin blush as the warm tea instantly cures her cramps. Qin Tian then reveals his galaxy brain animal taming strategy. By starving Fatty and slowly adjusting his diet over a month to 90% bamboo sprouts and 10% fish, he completely broke the wild beast spirit, even hugging Fatty from behind and calling himself Fatty's daddy. A month and a half later, Qin Tian hands Fatty a fresh bamboo sprout early in the morning. Fatty hesitates for a second, then happily munches down the bamboo like a true vegetarian, proving Qin Tian successfully brainwashed a prehistoric carnivore in record time. The system rewards his master tamer skills by unlocking pet mode. This feature links Fatty directly to Qin Tian's inventory, displaying his health status while mathematically preventing the pet from ever attacking its owner. After slapping Fatty on the back to officially claim ownership of Fatty, at nighttime Yilin asks if she can see Fatty now. Qin Tian agrees to take her tomorrow. Qin Tian brings Yilin to meet her new, oversized, fluffy bodyguard. Yilin timidly offers bamboo, and within a week, Fatty becomes so gentle she literally uses the giant demon bear as a fluffy pillow while he happily walks. Time to pack up camp. Yilin notices Qin Tian wove live fish into a hanging mesh trap to keep them fresh on the journey. Slapping Fatty's ass to load him up like a prehistoric pack mule, they throw away extra baskets, grabbing a flat stone slab for future cooking. Yilin looks back at their leaf tent with a nostalgic sigh, sad to leave their very first home behind. Qin Tian comforts her as they march into the forest. Right off the bat, the system drops a massive 3,000-point payout just for discovering a new shelter location. Stargazing by the campfire under the Milky Way with Fatty sleeping nearby, Yilin points out that none of them have to stand guard because now that their bear is guarding them, and they can both sleep together. Qin Tian catches the word together and start teasing her. Asks if she has feelings for him. Yilin gets flustered. As her internal monologue goes wild about not being ready, Qin Tian keeps getting closer, saying they can't sleep together cause they aren't couples. Yilin's heart jumps into hyperdrive. Qin Tian ruins the whole romantic mood by laughing out loud, claiming it was just a joke. Yilin gets super annoyed at his dense behavior, while Qin Tian asks her to the next task like nothing happened. The next day, while Yilin works on pottery, Qin Tian rides on Fatty's back like a medieval knight to explore the river, realizing the shallow waters won't cut it for fish farming. Moving to the deeper upper course, Qin Tian gets straight to work. On day 3, he uses Fatty as a literal logging truck to haul bamboo, bonking the bear over the head to remind him no snacks until the work is done. By day 4, he heats bamboo over open flames to bend it into elastic walls, building a cabin-like structure while completely shutting down Yilin's idea to coat the walls in mud because it will melt away in rain. 1 week later, these two officially complete a bamboo kitchen fully equipped with tables, shelves, and chairs. The system rains down rewards, giving him 500 points for a ladder and 500 for a bed, which he already used to buy an illustrated plant encyclopedia. With survival secured, the duo and Fatty go splashing in the river for a well-deserved vacation day. While playing in the river with Fatty, Yilin steps on a crystal-clear rock underwater, gasping if she just discovered valuable jade. Qin Tian instantly destroys her dreams, bluntly calling her stupid and explaining it's just plain old silica used to make glass. Pointing when it's this small it's just called rock. Pushing deeper into the upper river forest, Qin Tian discovers a massive 100-year-old pumpkin tree. The system reveals its berries have natural soap properties, prompting Yilin to mention her hair is getting super dry from using basic lard soap. Seeing a chance to upgrade her hair care routine, Qin Tian offers to make her custom shampoo. Yilin timidly tells him not to climb the dangerous prickly tree, but Qin Tian ignores her completely, flexing his parkour skills to leap 3 meters straight into the branches. Yilin blushes in total embarrassment as he grins down from above. Tying a safety rope around his waist, he chops down heavy bundles of pumpkin fruit, filling Yilin's basket to the brim. Qin Tian points it's more than enough to make a shampoo for her. Yilin pouts with a red face, stammering that he can do whatever he wants. Secretly thrilled about her new custom shampoo, Qin Tian says okay, forget it then. Yilin goes running to him, saying he shouldn't stop since he already put his mind in it. Next up, they march toward a massive field of sugar cane. While Yilin marvels at the dense stalks, Qin Tian's tactical brain spots a massive red flag. This field looks artificially planted by human hands. Before he can stop her, Yilin reaches out to touch a sugarcane leaf. She slashes her hand on a razor-sharp leaf. Qin Tian sighs, scolding her for touching wild plants bare-handed. Before chopping down the purple sugar cane to inspect it, Yilin makes a disgusted face after tasting the sweet and sour stalk. Qin Tian smiles, saying the sugar cane are already overripe. Realizing he can brew black sugar tea using these, Qin Tian and Yilin dry and peel the nutrient-packed pumpkin fruits, cooking up a batch of soft, delicious porridge that Yilin devours like a 5-star gourmet meal. They plan out their next survival upgrade, deciding to collect coconut palms tomorrow to complete their custom shampoo formula. The next morning, Qin Tian spends hours pressing bamboo tubes to squeeze out fresh juice. When Yilin comes marching back to camp with a basket full of wild mushrooms, looking proud of herself doing the gathering quest, Qin Tian gets happy and pets her. But when Qin Tian scans the basket with his system, he nearly has a heart attack. The basket is packed with destroying angel mushrooms that cause organ failure, fly agaric fungi that cause psychosis, and literal hallucinogenic magic mushrooms. Realizing his waifu almost cooked him a death meal, Qin Tian picks out the one single edible chanterelle mushroom, leaving Yilin disappointed while he sends her to pick peppermint leaves for DIY toothpaste. Turning into a full-time chemistry professor, Qin Tian breaks down the formulas on an imaginary chalkboard, combining palm oil, pumpkin juice, and gingerol-packed ginger water to prevent hair loss. He then steams peppermint leaves through clay pipes to condense pure menthol oil, mixing the palm oil and pumpkin oil in a perfect 5-to-5 ratio. The system rains down 800 points for shampoo and 500 points for toothpaste. When the work was finally done, Yilin stayed disappointed that she can't wash her hairs today. Later that night, Qin Tian wakes up in a cold sweat to eerie giggling in the dark. Turning around, he sees Yilin sleep talking about her own silky hairs in the dark, giggling like a madwoman over how soft her hair feels. Just as Qin Tian sighs in relief, massive thunder rumbles through the sky and a torrential downpour hits. Yilin wakes up from the sound. Suddenly, Fatty starts growling with crimson glowing eyes. Yilin points out that Fatty is acting different. She asks if Fatty is sick or something. Qin Tian pops open Fatty's status window, only to see a terrifying warning map. A massive stampede of red-eyed wild boars is charging straight toward their camp. Grabbing his bow, Qin Tian tells Yilin to hide inside while he prepares for the nightmare. The red-eyed boars come stomping through the mud, but Fatty charges straight into the fray like a berserker, slapping boars left and right with heavy bare paws. Qin Tian panics, realizing his oversized fluffy tank is about to get surrounded. While the boars focus entirely on Fatty, the giant bear chomps straight into a boar's neck like a savage apex predator, leaping across the battlefield. Sneaking into position, Qin Tian looses a poisoned arrow straight into a boar's neck. Watching the beast tremble and collapse, he realizes the frog poison is still potent. Realizing he only has 4 arrows left in his quiver, Qin Tian draws back his bowstring, channeling his inner Hawkeye to land a rapid-fire shots that drops 3 boars. But just as he catches his breath, a massive red-eyed boar in the bushes turns its head, locking its glowing crimson eyes directly on Qin Tian. Realizing those two red-eyed boars spotted him, Chin Tian doesn't panic. He decides to play aggro tank and lure them away from camp. Sprinting through the pouring rain, he leads the wild beasts deep into the forest, pulling off a masterclass kiting play. Escaping up a tall tree, Chin Tian notes that the heavy rain masked his scent. With the threat pulled away from camp, he dashes back to help Fatty, finding his oversized panda bear aggressively growling at the remaining boars. Chin Tian steps in, gently patting Fatty's head to calm his bloodlust. Sitting over the slain boars, next morning Yilin worries that Fatty's battle wounds might fester. But Chin Tian reassures her that wild animals are tough, dragging the massive boar carcasses back to their bamboo cabin. Chin Tian notes that boars always seem to rampage during heavy rainstorms, but Yilin points that it rained on the days when he was training Fatty, but there was no such boar attacks. Chin Tian agrees and says he is confused too, knowing it'll take all day to skin the boars. Chin Tian decides to hike into the bamboo forest to gather fresh sprouts as a reward for Fatty, finding only a tiny bundle that wouldn't even count as a light snack for a giant bear. Chin Tian pushes deeper into the unnaturally quiet jungle. He notices that it's too quiet today. Suddenly, he spots deep marks on the ground like there was a road roller. He gets a bad feeling and tries leaving, but ground starts shaking beneath his boots with a terrifying vibration. Chin Tian turns around, and his jaw drops in total horror as a legendary prehistoric monster emerges. A massive 12-meter-long, 1-ton titanoboa straight out of the Paleocene epoch, extinct for 58 million years, comes slithering through the trees. Chin Tian panics, wondering if dinosaurs are going to spawn next. When his system opens the animal taming guide, the Unhinged manual claims running is impossible, recommending 4 insane steps. Step 1, fight head-on. Step 2, jump inside its open mouth. Step 3, enter its guts. Step 4, cut your way out through its stomach. Chin Tian screams in utter disbelief at this absolute suicide advice, with the giant titanoboa flicking its scent-tracking tongue. Chin Tian sprints up a small hill and slides down the dirt slope, successfully buying a few seconds of breathing room. Realizing he used all his poison arrows last night, Chin Tian rejects the system's dumb mouth-jumping plan, comparing it to diving into a pool of lava. As the snake sniffs his location, Chin Tian draws his trusty hunting dagger, sprinting along the snake's massive body to stab it right where the heart should be. The snake screeches in pain, but his dagger was too short to pierce the thick scales. As the giant serpent thumps onto the ground, Chin Tian realizes a hilarious game exploit. If he sits directly on the snake's back, it can't smell or see him. For a whole hour, Chin Tian hitches a free ride on the slithering giant, until he gets hit with an absolute biohazard stink. Realizing they just entered a wild boar manure territory, the titanoboa suddenly accelerates, locking its sights directly on a wild boar running through the clearing. While the giant titanoboa is busy swallowing a wild boar whole like a massive Thanksgiving turkey, Chin Tian hops off its tail and dashes away. Realizing this giant snake was the real reason the boars went on a rampage in the first place. Running on pure adrenaline, Chin Tian slips and faceplants straight into the mud. Exhausted, bruised, and trembling from total fatigue, desperate to survive the night, he opens his system gacha wheel, praying to land a stamina buff like a horse's endurance. But the system gacha completely scammed him, awarding him the ability to own a second pet. Chin Tian facepalms in utter despair, wondering what he is even supposed to do with that right now, when a herd of wild boars comes marching through the bamboo trees. Praying they pass by, a lone boar pops out right in front of his face. Chin Tian tries screaming at it like a madman to scare it off, but the boar charges straight at him, sprinting for his life. His overused knee throbs with intense pain, forcing him to leap straight into a deep pit he remembered nearby. Diving headfirst into the pit, he lands with a nasty splash. Realizing the hole is filled with literal wild boar manure, the boars wander over, but because the foul stench completely masks his human scent, they fail to notice him and decide to take a nap right outside the pit. Trapped chest deep in steaming manure, Chin Tian suffers in absolute agony. The microbial heat decomposition and trapped carbon dioxide turn the pit into a literal sauna, making his limbs go completely numb, forcing himself to stay awake so he doesn't pass out and drown in poop. Suddenly, a torch flame flickers through the dark woods. Chin Tian thinks he is hallucinating, until he sees a legendary sight. Yilin riding into the dark forest on top of Fatty like a battle princess, wielding a blazing torch and an axe. Spotting the boars and seeing Chin Tian trapped in the pit, she screams his name. Fatty lets out a terrifying roar, scaring the sleeping boars away instantly. Chin Tian thinks he is dreaming, warning Yilin not to come close because he is covered in manure. But as he tries to stand, his numb legs give out, causing him to slip straight into Yilin's arms. Yilin catches him gently, reassuring him that they need to get back to safety. Mounting fatties back together, Qin Tian holds onto Yilin's waist, blushing furiously as he notices the hem of her white dress is torn. Realizing she ripped her own clothes to fashion bandages for his wounds, Qin Tian stares at her in awe, completely falling for this fierce, caring side of his campus goddess. After walking for 2 straight hours to escape that nightmare bamboo forest, Qin Tian and Yilin finally reach the river and collapse into the refreshing water. While Yilin washes up and tells him to keep his eyes to himself, the sheer fatigue hits them like a freight train, forcing them to stumble back to the cave camp. Yilin passes out on her bamboo bed immediately, so Qin Tian heads to the kitchen to give her privacy while searching for a quick meal. Inside the kitchen, Qin Tian spots the butchered boar, wondering if there was a wild animal here. He realizes how Yilin managed to craft that rescue torch last night. She literally cut open the boar's stomach with her own hands and pressed out raw pork fat oil like a hardened survivalist. But just as he is admiring her insane bravery, his knees completely give out from overusing cheetah agility, leaving him writhing in pain on the bamboo chair. The system pops up to award him a massive 7,000 points payout for escaping the Titanoboa. Dragging himself up, Qin Tian brings a warm bowl of porridge to Yilin, only to find her fast asleep. Staring at her peaceful face, Qin Tian reflects on how much he misjudged his campus waifu. A supposedly frail girl ventured into a pitch-black jungle infested with giant snakes just to save his life. That evening over dinner, Qin Tian casually asks if she followed the tracks on the ground to find him. When Yilin smiles and says yes, Qin Tian drops a massive truth bomb. Those were actually the giant slithering tracks of the Titanoboa. Yilin nearly chokes on her porridge, screaming in utter terror about how they will get food for Fatty. But Qin Tian reassures her that as long as they stay near the jungle entrance, the mega snake won't bother them. He warmly thanks her for saving him, making Yilin blush before giving him a gorgeous, bright smile. The next afternoon, Qin Tian begins the tedious task of butchering all 4 wild boars before the meat spoils in the heat. It takes him half a day just to cut up 1 boar, with Yilin playfully teasing him about his messy cuts. After 3 full days of grueling labor, they hang the meat strips outside to smoke dry over the fire. The next day, Yilin to suddenly scream in total shock that every single piece of meat has vanished into thin air. Qin Tian rushes over, completely baffled. Checking the ground, there are 0 footprints, and even Fatty sleeping nearby didn't hear a single thing. Realizing a stealthy phantom thief is on the loose, Qin Tian decides to sleep during the day and keep watch all night. When he wakes up after 12 hours, Yilin brings him fresh peppermint tea to keep him sharp, while Qin Tian ponders what kind of terrifying stealth predator could steal a half-year supply of food without making a sound. As the sun rises the next morning, Qin Tian yawns, thinking the thief won't strike twice in a row, when suddenly a massive shadow swoops down from the sky with a loud flap. Looking up, Qin Tian spots a legendary black eagle, a top 10 global apex raptor with a massive 2-meter wingspan that swoops down at 300 kilometers per hour to crush prey heads with its sharp talons. The giant bird boldly snatches their smoked meat straight off the bamboo drying rack. The system immediately hits him with taming instructions, explaining that to tame an arrogant black eagle, you either raise an eaglet or pull an all-nighter staring contest until its wildness breaks. Qin Tian stands in utter disbelief, thinking about what insane prehistoric creature this cursed island is going to spawn next. Why his life has to be this ridiculously tough. Instead of removing the empty racks, Qin Tian decides to leave them outside as bait to set up a classic snare trap using a bent bamboo pole and a tripwire. Yilin deeply doubts if a simple deer trap can catch an apex predator bird, so Qin Tian decides to test the trigger mechanism first. But when he presses the wooden switch, the spring-loaded bamboo stick snaps back and whacks him straight across the face like a cartoon slapstick gag. Rubbing his sore jaw, Qin Tian calls Fatty over to slam the trigger with his heavy bare paws. Fatty slams it so hard the entire bamboo frame cracks into pieces. But hey, at least the mechanism actually works. Later that afternoon, as Yilin yawns and asks if the bird will actually return, a piercing screech echoes from the clouds. The massive black eagle swoops down toward the fish bait, stepping right into the loop. The bamboo spring snaps upward with a loud yank, trapping the giant bird by its leg. Qin Tian stops Yilin from rushing over, wisely waiting for the raptor to exhaust itself so they don't get shredded by those razor-sharp talons. Once the bird collapses from sheer fatigue, they approach to inspect it up close. Yilin marvels that the eagle is half her size. Qin Tian sarcastically asks her if it ever crossed her mind that she might just be small. Yilin fires back that he isn't tall either. Qin Tian noticing a weird trend. Every animal on this cursed island, from swamp eels to pandas and giant snakes, is absurdly oversized. When Yilin asks why they are called black eagles, is it because they are black? Qin Tian answers saying some are brown too, but most are darker. Then Qin Tian gets that evil troll face smirk. Yilin gets that he must have gotten a name for the eagle. He officially names the proud avian beast Blackie. The eagle screeches in sheer humiliation while Yilin mocks his atrocious naming skills. Qin Tian tries to activate his system pet feature, but the system denies him, stating he must manually tame the beast first by breaking its wild spirit. Realizing he has to keep the eagle awake continuously, Qin Tian and Yilin agree to work in shifts, starting a brutal 1-week sleep deprivation war. Yilin guards during the afternoon, poking Blackie with a long bamboo stick whenever it tries to take a run away. In the second-day evening, Qin Tian is hallucinating from lack of sleep, earning 200 points for crafting a DIY toothbrush while showing it off to a completely speechless eagle. On day 3, whenever Blackie tries to snooze, Fatty comes barging in with a deafening roar to shock the bird awake. Meanwhile, Yilin crafts boar hide clothes, and Qin Tian boils down bones for gelatin, even bonking Fatty on the head when the lazy panda falls asleep on night watch. By the morning of day 5, Blackie is rocking red-eye bags, completely broken and ready to surrender. Qin Tian approaches with bamboo sticks, prompting the proud raptor to bow its head in total submission. Activating his system hand rune, glowing blue energy surges, rewarding Qin Tian with a massive 5,000 points payout for taming the black eagle. But as the status window displays hungry and tired, Qin Tian suddenly experiences a mind-blowing system side effect. Sharing a real-time optical link through Blackie's eyes, seeing the entire island from high above in the sky, and a young chick. Yilin is happy about that. They succeeded sooner than she thought. Qin Tian says it's because of Blackie's eaglet. Yilin asks how did he know about the eaglet. Qin Tian says it's a guess because they mate in summer or spring. She gets amused on the thought of having 2 eagles. Right on cue, feathered menace, Blackie lands smoothly on Qin Tian's arm like a total flex. Yilin tries to get some pet action, but Blackie instantly screeches in her face, giving her the ultimate cold shoulder. Yilin is straight up offended, but Qin Tian realizes the harsh truth. The system pet bind only recognizes him as the master. Yilin brings out fresh fishes for Blackie, pointing out that this majestic apex predator walks on land like a goofy, oversized chicken. The next morning, the rescue squad hits the trail early. Qin Tian uses his pet telepathy to figure out the eaglet's exact situation. The little guy fell straight out of its nest into a tight rock crevice, and if it rained, hypothermia is about to claim the poor creature. They trek deep into the wilderness, setting up camp as night falls. Qin Tian sprinkles calcium oxide around the perimeter, like to keep the mutant bugs away. While enjoying a cozy campfire meal, Qin Tian pulls out his inner math nerd, calculating that they have walked at least 20 kilometers into an endless sea of green. He starts overthinking like every overprepared survivalist, wondering how an island this massive and insanely rich in natural resources somehow avoided human civilization. Naturally, he starts talking about deadly predators, scaring Yilin half to death right before bedtime. Right on cue, the forest proves him right. Fatty suddenly drops his goofy demeanor, letting out a low, menacing growl. Glowing blue eyes light up the dark bushes like a horror movie jumpscare. A full pack of giant gray wolves emerges to crash their cozy camp. Qin Tian instantly breaks down the battle like a hardcore gamer. Fatty is their level 100 frontline tank. Qin Tian is the ranged archer. Yilin is the clueless support assistant, and Blackie is completely useless because raptors have 0 night vision. Qin Tian hands Yilin a makeshift torch and orders her to bring the heat. Yilin yeets a burning branch straight at the pack, confusing the beasts with pure fire. Qin Tian gives the command, and Fatty goes full berserker mode, roaring like thunder, completely obliterating the pack's morale. After surviving the midnight wolf raid, morning arrives, and Blackie guides them to a massive cliff face where the nest is located. The incline is way too steep for Yilin, so Qin Tian tells her to stay low and chill with Fatty while he does his best Spider-Man impression. He scales the bare rock face solo, almost slipping off to meet his maker before catching himself by a single ledge. Reaching the summit, he gets a breathtaking view of the island and spots a giant dormant volcano on the horizon. His inner engineer instantly starts drooling, knowing that volcanic zones mean unlimited mineral ores for his future metal upgrades. Blackie hits him out of dreams, reminding him that they are here on a rescue mission, not a geology field trip. The eaglet is stuck way down in a narrow rock crack. Without fancy climbing gear, Chin Tian uses his pet bind link to pull off an insane trick, instructing Blackie to lower a rope so the baby bird can clamp down with its beak. He pulls the rope up, successfully fishing out a surprisingly massive baby eagle. Tucking the featherball safely into his shirt, Chin Tian climbs back down the treacherous cliff, sweating bullets and swearing to never rock climb again. But as soon as his boots touch the ground, he looks around and realizes the horror. Yilin and Fatty have completely vanished into thin air. Before Chin Tian can fully panic, he spots a handwritten note on the dirt revealing Yilin just went grocery shopping in the woods. Right on cue, Yilin comes riding back on Fatty like a noble knight on a fluffy mount, bringing back a bamboo container of fresh supplies. But before they can even celebrate, a thunderous engine roars tears through the clouds. A literal propeller airplane comes swooping overhead, sputtering smoke and losing altitude fast. Realizing a plane crash just about to happen on their island, Chin Tian and Yilin sprint toward the impact zone, only to get cock-blocked by a massive, impassable cliff. Chin Tian pulls out his inner strategic general, drawing a dirty map in the mud to weigh their options. Heading back to base for supplies would waste too much time, so Chin Tian makes the executive decision to solo rush the crash site, while Yilin and Fatty head back to the mansion with the newly rescued baby eagle. Around the campfire that night, Yilin gets overly attached to the baby bird, trying to name it Love, which Chin Tian roasts without hesitation. The next morning, Yilin hands him a bamboo bottle of pine resin for emergency fire starting before they split up. Activated and ready, Chin Tian pops his cheetah agility skill like an endless stamina potion, speed running south toward the crash site every single hour. By noon, the terrain turns into a damp, squishy mess. Chin Tian taps into Blackie's optical link to get a drone view of the path ahead, only to spot a massive, infinite swamp blocking his way. With no path around it, he trudges straight into the murky bog, instantly getting swarmed by bloodthirsty mosquitoes. To make matters worse, a green venomous viper drops from the trees like a surprise jump scare, lunging straight for his neck. Chin Tian reacts with light-speed reflexes, whacking the snake midair with his bamboo can before Blackie swoops in like an aerial hitman, snatching the viper. Thinking he is finally in the clear, Chin Tian pops his speed buff to make up for lost time, only to instantly step into a deep pool of quicksand. He starts sinking like a stone, but instead of panicking like a minor character, he uses his big brain physics knowledge. Knowing quicksand is a non-Newtonian fluid, he commands Blackie to drop a bunch of heavy tree branches into the mud. Chin Tian spreads his body weight over the timber, slowly crawling his way out of the death trap over the course of an hour. Refusing to be defeated, he uses his survival crafting skills to build makeshift mudskis out of thick branches and vines, gliding across the quicksand like an Olympic skier. Meanwhile, at the actual crash site, the damaged propeller plane lies steaming in the swamp. The pilot groans as she sits up in the cockpit, revealing herself as a drop-dead gorgeous blonde aviator sporting a leather jacket and goggles. Pulling herself out of the wreckage, she wipes the dirt off her face and scans the treacherous bog, noting that this nightmare terrain looks dangerously similar to her previous survival expedition in South America. Standing beside her broken propeller plane, the blonde pilot calls out into the silent wilderness, only to get complete radio silence as the sun starts dipping below the horizon. Giving up hope for the day, she climbs back inside her cockpit for shelter, but suddenly hears something rustling through the swamp bushes. High above the treetops, Blackie spots the white fuselage and calls down to Chin Tian, guiding our survival Jigachad directly to the crash site. Chin Tian sprints to the vintage aircraft, finding no blood in sight, but notices something insanely weird. The plane looks completely brand new, yet it is an ancient vintage model with zero modern radio technology. Before he can ponder this anomaly, a desperate scream shatters the air. The blonde pilot comes sprinting out of the murky swamp like an Olympic runner, shouting that a horde of giant crocodiles is hot on her heels. The system instantly scans the threat. 4-meter-long, 1-ton swamp crocodiles capable of ripping human limbs off in seconds. Knowing fighting 1-ton reptiles on foot is a one-way ticket to the afterlife, Chin Tian leans out of the cockpit, grabs the pilot's hand, and pulls her up with raw strength. The blonde aviator tumbles straight into the cockpit, landing directly on top of Chin Tian in the most classic accidental anime romance cliché ever. Flustered out of her mind, she accidentally whacks him in the jaw before realizing he just saved her life. But the romantic tension instantly evaporates as the massive crocodiles surround the plane, violently ramming the metal body. Chin Tian pulls out his bow and fires a stone arrow, but it literally bounces off the croc's thick armor like a harmless pebble. Aiming for the eyes fails miserably because the monsters keep thrashing around, only making them angrier. Realizing the plane is about to capsize, Chin Tian opens his wilderness system menu, flexing a massive hoard of 12,700 banked points. Just as he searches for an archery buff, the pilot pulls out a bottle of high-proof liquor and a lighter, planning to Molotov the beasts. Chin Tian instantly stops her, screaming inside because wasting pure alcohol in a wilderness survival scenario is a cardinal sin. He takes her lighter and spends his system points to buy an aiming assistance skill. Golden energy surges through his body as the system reconstructs his physical specs, overlaying a literal video game auto-aim HUD scope directly onto his retinas. With target hitboxes, wind speed, and bow tension calculated in real time, Chin Tian lights his resin arrows on fire and lets them fly. Splutch! Point-blank flaming headshots penetrate straight into the crocodile's eye sockets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 crocs get systematically sniped in seconds. Terrified by the explosive headshots, the surviving crocs retreat back into the murky depths. Ecstatic from surviving the raid, the pilot calls Chin Tian her hero. They introduce themselves. Chin Tian tells his name, while she introduces herself as Jessica Hathaway. Jessica asks where are they and if there are more people beside them. But Chin Tian cuts her saying, if she has a cell phone. She asks, do you mean a telephone? Saying we can't use telephone without telephone line. As they talk more, they notice a bizarre communication gap between them. Later that night, sitting safely on the plane cabin over a torch, Jessica hands him a can of preserved beef from her cargo. Chin Tian inspects the metal can, November 1928. He stares in utter disbelief, wondering if this food is almost a century old. Jessica casually munches on the beef like it is fresh from the grocery store, assuring him it tastes great. Taking a cautious bite, Chin Tian realizes it is surprisingly delicious. Stuffed and exhausted from the battle, Jessica yawns as the night sky fills with stars. Chin Tian decides they will camp atop the plane, staring up at the galaxy. Morning comes at the crash site, and Chin Tian wakes up to find Jessica already preparing to cook. Her backpack is a literal Doraemon 4D pocket, packed with high-tier survival gear. He hands over the fresh pork for soup. After a hearty meal, Chin Tian uses caveman-style dirt drawings and charades to invite her back to their main base camp. But just as they pack up, black soars overhead, making Jessica freak out thinking they are about to get dive-bombed by an apex raptor. Chin Tian flexes on her by calling Blacka down like a Disney princess, casually proving the oversized eagle is his personal pet. As they trek through the jungle, a dense, ominous fog rolls in out of nowhere, completely blinding Blacka's aerial view. They decide to take a breather, but Jessica suddenly passes out on the grass. Chin Tian feels a wave of dizziness hit him like a hangover, collapsing to the ground. But hitting the deck actually saves his life. He notices the air is cleaner near the soil, realizing this fog is actually lethal methane gas, which is lighter than oxygen and rises upward. To double-check his theory, Chin Tian uses his system aiming skill to yeet a lighter into the fog, triggering a mini-explosion like an action movie hero. With Jessica still unconscious, Chin Tian digs into her survival backpack, finding a medical kit, a storage battery, syringes, wires, and metal spoons. Turning into MacGyver, Chin Tian uses a bamboo tube, fresh water, and the battery to build a DIY electrolysis oxygen inhaler. He sticks the oxygen tube into Jessica's nose, pumping fresh O2 straight into her lungs until she snaps back to reality. Taking turns with the bamboo inhaler, they rush out of the toxic gas zone and make camp for the night. Meanwhile, back at the bamboo mansion, Yilin is fighting a losing war against local raccoons stealing her fish. She feeds the baby eagle, but grows increasingly anxious, staring at the sky because Chin Tian has been missing for 3 whole days. Suddenly, Blacka swoops down to announce the king's return. Chin Tian walks out of the forest, but Yilin's emotional reunion is instantly shattered when she spots a gorgeous blonde pilot trailing behind him. Chin Tian teases her for missing him. She refuses. Chin Tian awkwardly tries to introduce them, claiming there is a massive language barrier. Out of nowhere, Jessica greets Yilin in fluent, perfect speech. Chin Tian gets hit with the ultimate meme shock face, realizing Jessica was basically trolling him or letting him do all the charades for nothing. That night around the campfire, Jessica reveals she is a paleontologist searching for a mythical prehistoric island to study extinct species. While Yilin and Chin Tian realize she is not a rescue team, her flight path could help them build a raft to escape. However, Jessica is not worried at all. She looks at Fatty the demon panda with crazy scientist eyes, practically drooling at the thought of dissecting a living prehistoric bear. But the real mindfuck happens when they discuss the current era. Jessica casually mentions that finding giant pandas will be the biggest discovery of the 20th century. Yilin laughs and corrects her, saying it is the 21st century. Jessica looks at them like they are insane, insisting that the 21st century is 70 years away. Chin Tian stares blankly and says the year is 2027. But Jessica drops a massive plot twist bomb, swearing on her life that the current year is 1927. Chin Tian tries to wrap his big brain around the insane timeline glitch. Jessica departed Los Angeles in 1927 before getting swallowed by a storm, while Chin Tian and Yilin capsized in 2027. Chin Tian connects the dots, realizing the freak storm was a temporal wormhole like the Bermuda Triangle. This explains how prehistoric monsters from different eras got dropped onto the exact same island. But instead of having an existential crisis, Chin Tian shifts the party's focus back to immediate survival. Jessica brings up a massive biology fact. Titanoboas are cold-blooded apex predators that need scorching tropical heat, meaning they're skin chaps in cool environments. Yilin suddenly remembers that wild boars only go on berserk rampages when it rains. Connecting the dots, Chin Tian realizes the Titanoboa only leaves its hot lair to hunt in the bamboo forest during heavy rainstorms. As long as the sky is clear, the ultimate boss monster stays asleep. When it is time for sleep, she looks Yilin dead in the eye and asks if she and Chin Tian are a couple. When Yilin stammers in flustered embarrassment, Jessica seizes the opportunity, pulling Chin Tian close and declaring that she wants him as her boyfriend because he saved her like a true hero. Yilin turns into an instant Yandra staring daggers through Chin Tian's soul. Chin Tian panics, shouting that they should just be friends first. But Jessica lands a sneaky flying smooch right on his cheek anyway. Chin Tian retreats into Jessica's sleeping bag like a turtle hiding in its shell. To make matters crazier, Jessica stripped down to her underwear because her flight clothes are dirty, prompting Yilin to curse her Western liberalism. But she spots Chin Tian peeking from the sleeping bag and beats him down, calling him a pervert. The next morning, Yilin serves breakfast with eyes colder than an Antarctic blizzard. When Chin Tian left Jessica alone with Yilin, she concludes that Yilin probably likes Chin Tian and casually proposes a polygamy solution, offering Yilin the coveted title of first wife. Flustered beyond belief, Yilin sprints over to Chin Tian and aggressively screams that she is the first wife, leaving our clueless Jigachad completely confused. Once the harem drama settles down, Chin Tian lays out his two-part survival roadmap. Step 1. Fortify the base with defensive spiked fences. Raise captured boars for food security, and mine iron ore to forge nails. Step 2. Build a massive seaworthy vessel to escape the island. Jessica hands Yilin some fresh spare clothes from her cargo, leaving Chin Tian jealous that he did not get a drip upgrade, though he gets hyped over her metal axes and shovels. The next morning, Chin Tian rides Fatty into the woods while Blackie provides drone coverage, confirming the Titanoboa is absent. Chin Tian revisits the wild boar manure pit he hid in earlier. Inspecting the purplish dirt beneath the waste, he identifies rich deposits of saltpeter, the core ingredient for crafting potassium nitrate. Loading the refined dirt onto Fatty, Chin Tian returns to camp, where Yilin and Jessica proudly reveal a custom bathtub they built together. The next afternoon, Chin Tian kicks off the gunpowder speedrun. He mixes green with ash and saltpeter in a precise 1:8 ratio, filtering the solution over bamboo poles with boiling water to extract pure potassium nitrate.